It's been, for many of you, a long day. We are starting late with this panel, already for more than half an hour. So in that regard, I would have a very humble and kind request, at the same time kind for our audience, to our speakers, to be perhaps sharper than they've intended to do in terms of time, so that instead of having 7 or 8 minutes that they would have had at their disposal, to be limited with 5 minutes if possible on their side, so that we just continue conversation rather than have big speeches from our side, and still leave some leeway or the room for audience to be engaged, or the second round of thoughts for yourself as well, as you would wish. We are not the very large group, which makes it even more interesting when it comes to engagement that we could target for the discussion. All of us might have had different ideas and plans and main pointers, messages for what we wanted to cover at this session. But at the same time, I guess it would be good to reflect on what has been said already for the past few days. A lot of information that has been shared, a lot of issues that have been raised with relation to climate change related issues, how to mitigate, how to adapt, how to transit to the types of economies, and then the social equilibrium, so to say, in it that could lead to the better future in a more sustainable way. So we could pick up on this as well, and then have that reflected in the introductions that otherwise have been planned from your side. The way we've structured the discussion, which we have to lead today, is larger in terms of the scale or the issues that could be tackled than the climate change per se. We speak about challenges that we are anticipating to be the biggest ones, so to say, for the coming decade. And obviously climate change is the big one, and many of the issues that could be associated with the climate challenge, climate emergency as we call it already, is associated with other challenges that we could identify as well. But there were a few of them that have been raised by my side to the speakers as just pointers that they could have picked up on, but they have freedom obviously to choose what is the issue or issues they want to focus in their own interventions. But then to name but few, so to say, the big ones, they are the following. We see that continuation of the geopolitical turmoil is still taking place in the world, to be mild on that. We are not unused, unfortunately, to that. It has been for the past few decades already, at least two, a deteriorating scene geopolitically rather than an upstream movement for more cohesion of common approaches, thoughts, alliances that could have been built along the common causes. It's rather reversed, even in the area where previously strong alliances have been put at place after the Second World War. We see that even they are becoming fractured or challenged to be fractured. So that is obvious issue that we could discuss during this panel. In a way, parallel to that, economic trends have been positive for the past 2 decades in many ways after the 2008, in the way how world economy came out of the crisis and how the growth and development have been experienced at large, I would say, if one would generalize that in the world. But now we hear more and more from the specialists, which I'm not as a lawyer, that the trend is somewhat troubling in that as well. So does it make a difference when we couple that with the geopolitical turmoil? So whether or not economic downturn could be expected, whether or not even stagnation, as some experts are calling for, even for 2021, is somewhat realistic in this regard, and how much that impacts in overall the situation and context where politically the world is developing. Fractioning of not only the politics but economy as well. We see this great trade war between the US and China, but it's not only that. In the digital world, we see decoupling as well. And then digital economy is the new economy and then future economy in so many ways. So what is an impact of that in one way or the other that one could experience, obviously, with that? At the national level, we spoke partially about that during the past few days. Polarization, radicalization, tribalism in national policies. How national policymakers are dealing with the challenges of today and the future, and whether or not they are able to overcome the electoral cycles in which they feel that they are trapped, but maybe they lack the leadership to get free out of that trap and then be more visionaries to the midterm, at least, if not the long-term commitments that they have to make. So what drives the internal political forces? and how much we could be a bit exaggerating are we now in terms of the popular understanding of the long-term challenges, because as it seems, the way how national politics are developing, there might be somewhat lack of that in the way how populism is still gaining the traction rather than receding, and how much and what needs to be done by us, by those who are committed for those causes, to raise the awareness of those issues. I don't know if we are ready to talk today about the health, but then it's not a reflection of the latest news about the virus now, the new one that has emerged in China, but health is another area in which we somewhat of a black swan maybe to many of us at the policy making level still. What are the implications of the climate change vis-a-vis the health, in a way that new pandemics and epidemics could be part of it, in the way that we need to be aware of that, what needs to be part of an investment to be made today for the better future to emerge. I'll stop at that. It's just to tease our conversation, perhaps. It's not direction per se to our speakers. So as I've said, I'll try to keep an eye on the time myself as well, and not too much intrusive to our speakers when they will be speaking in that regard. So I have to remind myself of the order of our speaking arrangement, if I can make a use of this. You start or no? 5 minutes, yes, but then who starts? Let's just make it this way. Anna, if... No? Be respectful with the order, yeah, so. Because I forgot to take it. Okay, sorry for that. So we'll start with Mladen Ivanic then.
Okay, I know that we are at the end of the long day, especially if we compare that with yesterday, so I will not close to the end. I would rather share my dilemmas with you than my positions, because I really believe that we have an interesting subject to discuss, challenges. I think that, for me at least, there are two main pillars of the modern Western society which are in a crisis. One is linked with the political life, democracy, and another one with the economy. How I see this crisis? If we see the current situation, especially in the Western society, first we all agree that there is a lack of the leaders. And everybody said that we are now faced with a populism-like approach. Then my first dilemma is it populism linked with the democracy? Because if you want to be re-elected, you have to fulfill expectations of the main part of the public, 50+1. Then if it's so, then there is another question, how the same system produced the leaders like Schuman, Adenauer, Mitterrand, Kohl, Willy Brandt, all of the leaders which end basically at the end of the 80s. Is it because of the system? Or is there any other reason? But definitely this is a challenge for the modern Western society. What does it mean, democracy in the new circumstances? Where is the direction of this society? Another is linked with the corporate governance. The crisis, which was the outcome of the property investments in the United States, shows that even that pillar is in a crisis. You know, the main managers, they were not stupid. They knew that this approach will finish in some sort of the crisis, that it's not never-ending successful story. But their interest was to be very profitable, to lead with the very profitable companies as long as they are there. When they leave, and they leave if they are successful to another, even more bigger companies or even more bigger banks, who cares what will be the outcome of the whole of that game? They were not stupid. They knew that there will be a problem. Then the typical answer has to be, then the government has to control all this. But then, from the typical Western society point of view, it will mean limit of entrepreneurs. which is against the basic rule of the market economy. It's good to risk with your own capital, but if you make a risk with the other capitals, it doesn't cost you so much if you leave enough early. And without these two basic pillars, and I think that this is the real challenge, I don't have any clear vision in which direction will the Western society go in the next decade. And this is something which is, according to my opinion, very essential, very crucial. I don't pretend to be so clever to know the answers, or maybe I have some ideas, but not the answers to that. But for me, this is a real challenge. And from that challenge, the other issues, like even the climate change, you cannot make any change without a strong economy on one hand, and without the leaders at the governmental level on the other hand. So it's linked with all other challenges with which all these societies are faced. And then the another big answer is, yes, we have leaders on the other side, from the systems which are not so democratic. There are clear leaders in China. There is a clear leader in Russia. And even some leaders from the Western countries, they never say so in the public, but in reality they accept the leadership of these persons. So I think that the Western society is based with a real challenge. And to be honest, I think that this will be maybe not the story only of the next one decade, but maybe a little bit longer. So I hope it's within the limit, a little bit longer. Sorry.
Thank you very much for the points you've raised, and for making me to have no interference to be made when it comes to the timing in that regard. So we'll proceed with Filip then.
Thank you, dear friends. I think that our topic basically is issue of is there a need to shift paradigm or approach in politics, business and society in the coming decades? My answer is there is no need for new approach or paradigm approach in the coming decades. Why? Because the challenges and opportunities of coming decade will be same as in the previous decades. There will be surely the challenges and obligations to preserve globalism against anti-globalism that has never been harmless. Experience has shown that it will remain dangerous, which additionally and strongly mobilizes all countries to affirm the value of globalism. Historically, the strongest and most successful response to anti-globalism was the formation of the United Nations, which was necessary to prevent the tragic consequences of the World War II from happening again. That is why the United Nations' primary mission is to maintain international peace and stability, but also very important to promote, protect human rights, strengthen social and economic development, protect the environment, and provide humanitarian assistance in natural disasters. Ever since the United Nations dominated globalism, its mission was fulfilled. However, the mission was threatened when the issues and interests of the individual states, especially the wealthiest and most powerful, began to dominate. If one considers the United Nations' success in projects over the past decades, such as the Millennium Goals, the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement of Climate Change, that it must be stated that globalism and the United Nations missions have no alternative. It should also be noted that the past decade has witnessed anti-globalism policies and aspiration. it has testified to putting the interests of one's own country first, while jeopardizing global interests and goals. The announcement that the global achievements of the United Nations are being abandoned, such as climate agreement, is an example of anti-globalization. It is a very dangerous example because it jeopardizes one of the most important global needs, the protect of people's health. Therefore, it is duty of all leaders with greater or lesser influence and the civil organization operating nationally, regionally and globally, as well as the media communities to promote and to protect globalism. I agree with Mladen that position of leader is very important, very significant. But approach is very important. If we are in globalism need, inside of globalism, and if we are advocated globalism as our approach, I think that it is very important and we are obliged to do it. We have witnessed lots of achievements in globalism approach. I agree with Mladen that the project of the Belt and Road Initiative is excellent approach. Very significant as producing connectivity among states, among regions, among continents, and to be in position to encourage new achievements in many countries, being in situation to create new values. Concerning it, such approach as globalism is very, very important. On the other hand, globalism should also be promoted through mission of other global organizations. I advocate that globally trade is best protected through the genuine and effective functions of the World Trade Organization. Also, there is no better way to protect the health of the people than by activities of the World Health Organization. All other global organizations will their own success bring the common good to mankind. I think that the basic issue is globalism and we are obliged to advocate it, and I think that Nizami Ganjavi follow I think message of Nizami Ganjavi to be on the side of globalism. It's my view and I think it's so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Filip. Thank you, Filip. I think very clear and strong message when it comes to the need of the common effort in tackling any challenges that are upcoming for the for the future decade and then even beyond. And by unilateral action, there is no way of tackling any of it in this regard. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, dear friends, as we are at the beginning of the year, please allow me firstly to wish you and the loved ones all the best for 2020. I can say to you that it's a real privilege for me to see you again and to be invited to speak in front of you, but likewise to listen to you. And as always, the discussion has been very rich and good lessons for me as well. So to be invited by Nizami and the Mariana Foundation, and to be really among such great personalities in this very important panel, but be in Athens the candle of democracy as well. So speaking in a prediction panel, it's always one of the trickiest and yet the most exciting challenges, as they invite you to analyze the information you possess about the present and the past and to put your ideas in actions in the context. And afterwards, over the years, you can sit back and see how concrete you were, what the things you missed or misinterpreted were, and most importantly, in what way were they different. And as I was preparing for this panel, it came to my mind one advice that my grandma used to tell me, among many great advances, and said, look, the past is important so the lessons from the past are important to build the present, but especially to build the future. And I think this is very important for us, not necessarily to predict, but to anticipate and shape the future especially. So I'm not going to go over the climate change, as there were very rich discussions in the past days. I could say that from my side, I would like to see more actions, as obviously as each and all of us. And I can share with you one lesson that will always be with me. When I was the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of the strategic partnerships of Romania, in 2018, I remember I was attending high-level conferences on climate change as well in the Pacific and Caribbean. And I was having either in the plenaries or on the breaks or on the bilateral talks, and the conclusion was one very clear: the climate change for this part of the world, but not for that part, just for that part of the world, but they were teaching us that lesson, that the climate change is a matter of survival for them. And I think it is a matter of survival for all of us if you are not taking into consideration the science and address them properly. What attracted my attention to this special conference was looking at the heritage, at this treasure that we have, at this an amazing, beauty, an amazing beauty that we have around us. And I think it is a mandatory obligation and duty for the present, but especially for the future, to present this beauty and to allow our children and grandchildren to look at this amazing heritage that we got sometimes or look at it for granted, and not thinking, hey, this is a living history, as we were learning past discussions as well. I will just run through, but I noticed that it was one of our colleagues missing, so I might drop into the... Well, yeah, so I want to share with you a few challenges that I see from along with climate change. The new technological revolutions comes with opportunities and challenges as well. From an economic point of view, artificial intelligence, for example, is a new factor of production and has the potential to introduce new sources of growth, changing how work is done and reinforcing the role of people to drive growth in businesses. This will have a bigger impact on the older and less educated categories, but the majority of the people working today will have different jobs when they will retire, for sure, and at the same time transition towards climate neutrality is implying tremendous social economic cost. And from this perspective, we need to framework a framework that includes support mechanisms for ensuring an efficient and sustainable process. And obviously at the EU level we try to do as much as we can, as we try to do in our respective countries. And I guess with that in mind, I want to touch a little bit on the internet, the challenges and opportunities that internet is facing and will be facing. By the end of the decade, I think the Internet of Things will be day-to-day reality. We are not thinking necessarily this, but this is a challenge and a serious opportunity it could be if we tackle it rightly. So we will have the Internet of Things on a daily reality, with self-driving cars, smartphones, and different smart gadgets that will act as remote controls for ovens, fridge, and everything surrounding us. I don't know if that's a good thing or it's not a good thing. I remember that, I like reading books through a gadget, but when my son was going just on the gadgets, I took the decision to send him to do an internship to a library, and he became a librarian for 2 weeks. And after that, he discovered that actually from time to time it is nice to have the smell of an old book and to touch it. So always it's important to have the balance. Be patient with me because there are important points. In this decade, more than ever, we will need to find a satisfactory answer to the question where to draw the line between security and privacy. I think that will be an important aspect. We need to ask ourselves, can we still talk about privacy when important information about our location, preferences and contacts are fed daily to unknown entities, such as internet operators, portal managers and cookie developers? We always learn in law that one person's right is going as far as is going to start hurting somebody else's right. So how do we address that? How is that going to go with the artificial intelligence? Can use artificial intelligence in cyber attacks mean to acquire goods, endanger a person, for example? And we know that there is a real war, which is the economic wars through the internet. I looked once through some statistics, and we are losing money every single day, millions and millions of euros or dollars, whatever you want to call it, in what currency, through the hacking and attacks. So I'm skipping through. I hope that those will be coming through the questions. But I guess what I'm saying that today everything is changing at a higher pace to the technical advancement, and one present job might not be required anymore in 10 or 20 years, and that's why the education is important. And I think I always promoted the philosophy that the school should form the kids to think, not just to inform them, because that's a real challenge. What are the sources we can trust? How do we steer the ship in the middle of the storm and take the right decision, including teaching our kids from early on to, yes, the internet is amazing, but the cybersecurity is important. The internet is amazing, but the kids need to protect themselves. And in Romania, for example, I propose to have in schools, to teach in school, part of the curricula according to their age, to understand how they need to protect themselves from several information that you find through the internet. And we talked once about the radicalization that can happen through the internet, and it happened many times. So in other words, and in conclusion, now the internet is the new agora. Online, everyone has a voice and is free to express the way he wants or she wants. One of the consequences is that we need more time to interact with them in order to understand what they want, time we don't take anymore. So fake news are challenges, and are going to be more challenges. So in other words, we might educate ourselves in the spirit of universal knowledge, similar to the Renaissance man. More cultivated individual will have a broader perspective on the world, will better equipped to detect and dismiss fake news, and will be able to better understand people coming from different cultures. And we are facing conflict stemming from the use of information and communications technology, and that's another challenge. And we have witnessed cyber attacks in different fields, not just on critical energy infrastructure of Ukraine or the election infrastructure in several other countries, but on our networks on several international organizations. And here is another challenge that we need to take seriously into consideration, because ultimately is affecting the citizens of a large number of countries with high cost for the economies of this. So the new decade announces itself busy and intense. We can say that for sure. But I think through the regional and international efforts to deal with the security challenges and threats should be continuing. And I guess as a conclusion, more actions following the discussions. And I'm really grateful and very confident that discussions like the one we have now and we had in the past few days in this format, where you can speak very freely and you can learn from each other, the conclusions we are drawing, I think, are serious base for policies to be taken forward. So thank you so much, and I apologize for not being so disciplined.
Thank you, Anna. We'll proceed right away with the next speaker to make ourselves efficient. So Boris, the floor, it's Boris Tadic right now. Yes, Boris.
Thank you very much. 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 Thank Thank you, Eka. They say we are living in the unpredictable world, but everyone who is looking back to the history can confirm that we've been always living in an unpredictable world. What is changing right now is the speed of unpredictability and the combination of factors which is affecting current world. I agree with Mladen that one of the most important issue which is challenged by that kind of combination of factors is leadership, and specifically democratic leadership in the new circumstances. But let's remind ourselves how many challenges we are facing with in the current situation of the history of mankind. Digitalization, 5G generation of connectivity, globalization, migrations, climate and demographic changes, depopulation. Some populations are getting older, specifically in European Union. And they are not using migration as a potential for growth, which is a controversial. Using threat in a global policy. For example, President of Turkey is threatening Europe to allow the migrants to go into the Europe. We're facing with the problem, the lack of the international rules. We are awaiting new global orders. The current one are not enough for changes we are facing with and challenges we are facing with. The new global power is coming. This is China. We've been living in the Cold War era with the two global powers, but China is inevitable right now. The fourth one is coming, staying behind of China. This is India. They are changing their attitude in global arena, and they are very much focused on creating potential to control area of the oceans by investing in the aircraft carriers. China is producing already next one, and India is very much investing in that. I'm only mentioning some factors that are challenging all of us. And I would like to remind ourselves what is the title of our panel: Challenges and Opportunities of the Coming Decade. Paradigm shift in politics, business, and society. The current orders, as I said, are not functioning anymore. I mean, the World Trade Organization is one of the most important institution of liberal economy, and the rules we adopted after Second World War is not the same like it was only a few years ago. And who is in fact demolishing the influence of the World Trade Organization? This is United States, one of the founding father country of the new world orders after Second World War. Global powers are replacing their position, and in terms of ideology, in terms of insisting on the models that are existing for decades. Traditional economy is not sustainable. Do we have new models of economy nowadays? This is one of the most important questions. New models that are sustainable and able to make efficient response on demands that exist among the people. Do we have new models of the international rules? Not enough and not really efficient right now. What is the outcome of that? The big powers are using that limbo, that vacuum, in order to impose their interests. Libya is one of the model, one of the best example. You remember how Libya as a case, international case started. Well, corruption in Libya, lack of democracy, and the Western democracies has been interfering in Libya. And now we have a catastrophic situation in Libya. If I have to mention Syria, Iraq, and other countries, we'll see what is really outcome of the new leadership in these past 2 decades. The global leadership. What was the one of the most important issues that Mladen has been mentioning. We talked about climate changing, and someone have said that accommodation and adaptation on climate changing can save within 1 century almost 300 billion euros in Greece. But if we have accommodation in economy, we can save even more. But do we have a new efficient model in economies? I can say we have only sharing economy as one of the model which is coming, and which is very interesting, which is a changing paradigm of the traditional models of economy. Sharing economy means that we are more focused on renting, swapping, and economic platforms than ownership and the classical economic enterprises. Sharing economy means that we have to educate new generations for new models. Sharing economy means that we can protect better environment in these new circumstances. This is hope, but I'm not sure this is sustainable hope regarding the fact that how things are changing slowly within the human beings and the societies. This is what we have to take into the consideration when we are trying to bring new models that are going to be solutions for problems we are facing with. But let me say only a few things about current situation in terms of digitalization, new role of the media in that circumstances, the fake news, what Ismail have mentioned, deep fake news in media that are even more dangerous, and the speed of the connectivity with the 5G generation, which is unbelievable. We are talking about 5G, even though not many people are aware about that, but in China, and Huawei and ZTE, they are thinking about 6G generation. High G is 100 times faster than 4G. And 6G, the human beings even cannot register it. But this is going to create huge impact in economy and sharing information, using data in a proper way or improper way. And this is challenge. We can use even medicine in a proper way, but also in improper way. We can use data in proper way, improper way. But having in mind the changes that we are witnessing in politics, in political arena, that we have a really interesting personalities on the power, not only in the small vulnerable democracy, but also in the big powers, is bringing all of us in a very difficult situation to make conclusions what is going to be with our world. This is a question that I'm pointing out, and I would like all of you to think about that. I mean, we've been always thinking that monarchies are failing because in monarchies you cannot control who is going to come to the power. Because sometimes you have some mad people that are members of royal families. But nowadays we are facing with the problem, even democracies are bringing some mad people on the power. People are following them. This is not first time in the history of mankind. I'm reminding all of you that Hitler came to the power with democratic standards. Democracy is not ideal model. And we have to think about not changing only rules in economy, but also changing rules regarding democracy and the global orders. But how we are going to change the rules? This is big challenge for all of us. This is one of the biggest dilemma we are facing with, because the way of changing rules is extremely sensitive, because democracy is extremely vulnerable, because human beings are extremely vulnerable. And in that respect, I don't see philosophers in the current situation, political thinkers that are bringing fresh and new ideas and innovation in that respect. If I have to remind all of you the impact of social network on democracy, fake or deep fake news, This is really extremely dangerous and sensitive situation we are facing with, which can create huge impact not only on stability of society, but on economic field in the long term. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Boris. I have to apologize to Rashid Alimov. I have omitted him in the list of the speakers when I was going through the speakers. So I will introduce him now to the audience, and then you will be the one closing, Shaukat, then the session.
Thank you. No, apologize. Thank you, dear distinguished colleagues. The world is changing fantastically fast, and any forecast may not last even a day or even an hour. At the same time, there are phenomenal and trends beyond which you can still see the distant contours of our world in 2030. Let me share my thoughts of them. First, according United Nations estimates, by 2030, the world's population will grow by 1 billion and reach 8.5 billion people. And this is important to know, every 8th inhabitant of the Earth will be over 65 years old. Second, by 2030, those who were born at the crossroads of millennia will play a noticeable, if not key, role in the political, economic, and social life of countries. Their number will exceed 2 billion people. In this generation that will lead the process of changing the technological order in the world, the active introduction of artificial intelligence in all spheres of life. Third, by 2030, economic competition will enter a new level. The leader will be the one who will stand at the forefront of the new technological revolution, put innovation at the center of public policy. In 10 years, it is expected that 20 million, or 8.5% of all production jobs in the world, will be occupied by industrial robots, and 12 million in China, and 1.9 million robots in the EU. Fourth, the engine of the global economy in the coming decade will be intra-regional trade. It is obvious that it is multilateral integration institutions such as ASEAN and the African Union, for example, SCO, and another, that will stimulate the rapid growth of the regionalization of trade. For example, in turn, the 2080 agreement of the creation of the African Continental Free Trade Zone will create a common market with the participation of 1.2 billion people and a total production volume of over $2.5 trillion. And this is important to know, Asia and Africa will enter the start of economic competition of two continents, which will affect, of course, the speed of the global economy. Fifth, most likely, like our friends and colleagues said before, e-commerce will become the dominant one in the world trade. According to UNCTAD, in 2090, the global e-commerce turnover reached $29 trillion. For example, in the BRICS countries, the average annual growth of electronic commerce was 20%, and this trend will grow steadily. The day is not far off when in most countries where the banking system is developed, mobile payments will become the norm. For example, in 2090 in China, 86% of the population, now it's 1.4 billion, used only online wallets. 86%. The geography of such examples will be expanded. And by 2030, 3 out of 4 people will have a mobile device with internet access, and the middle class will have great purchasing power. Together, these 2 factors will provide a powerful breakthrough for e-commerce. 6. In 2030, Asia will rightfully become the leading region of the world economic scheme. China and US, like Boris Tadic said before, in PPP will take first and second place in the global economy, and India and Japan, respectively, third and fourth place. 7. By 2030, our planet will become 1.5 degrees warmer, subject to the Paris Agreement. Climate changes will affect the global economy, of course, but Africa, for example, has great chances to create an agriculture market worth $1 trillion. And not only 6 African lions, Ethiopia and Ghana, Kenya and Mozambique, Nigeria and South Africa, can enthrall most of the countries of the continent and together become creators of the African economic miracle. UN experts consider this forecast to be quite realistic. And finally, 8, since the beginning of the new millennium, the world has been constantly in a state of change. In the second decade, the situation in global politics and economics experienced a high level of turbulence and tensions. We hope that the coming decade will be a period of deeply rethinking the lessons of the recent past, restoring constructive interaction primarily between the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and strengthening international cooperation in the interest of preserving peace on Earth and sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rashid. We have the final word in the panel given to Shaukat now.
Thank you. I will be brief, ladies and gentlemen. That's the good news, because everybody has spoken. Let me just say a few things. First of all, we live in a world which has been and will be in constant change. The degree and intensity of which it will vary. And when you have or new creations or new inventions or new mechanisms coming to the market, then you'll see mega change. I think we are at the cusp of a mega change because of technology. Remember, we all had mobile phones even 10 years ago. We never did anything like we do today. And this may be, you'll say, we've heard this 80 times before. But if you sit back and think, with those mobile phones now you have connectivity, you have digitization, you have eliminated so many services which you used before, and I can go on and on. In the interest of time, I'll just say that today, if you are not a digitized individual, meaning you don't have an electronic device with you, you will not live for long, because you'll be so out of touch that you will feel very frustrated. So either you learn, and age is no barrier. I've seen people 70, 80 years old with a mobile phone. They don't do much on it, but at least see the information. So first of all, we live in a world of constant change. Now, change is all good, but it also creates challenges. Change management, ladies and gentlemen, which is a subject which many universities teach, is now very much in demand. Because you can't look in the rearview mirror and drive your car. You have to look all around you. So, if you take banking as an example, my bias, because I grew up in a bank, today, I was talking to a teller the other day in a branch in Dubai of a bank I used to be the CEO for, and I said, "How are you busy?" He said, "Sir, actually I'm worried about my job because nobody comes as much as they used to. They go to the ATM, it's open 24 hours. I have nothing extra to offer. So I'm really concerned maybe they'll consolidate." So, and we are down to, in that branch, one teller and one customer assistant because everybody does their own thing. And this can apply to any business we look at, ladies and gentlemen. Now, digitization is a reality. Technology is a reality. And because of my bias, I would say one area which it has influenced us tremendously is banking and finance. However, we all fly every day. Have you ever been in a cockpit lately? I'm a frustrated flyer, so I do go and sit, and if they allow me, I go in and chat with the captains. Really, if all is well, they have nothing to do. And even now, the landing, once he punches in Heathrow, Terminals 4, etc., he's sitting there in case, God forbid, something goes wrong. But even the barring the turns, everything else is automated now. And they are ground controlling machines which direct the plane. So digitize, first message I'll leave with you is digitization is here to stay. You cannot fight it. You have to embrace it. You have to adopt it. And no matter what you do, this will come and make your life easier if you accept it. If you don't, you'll be highly frustrated. Now, this being the case, how does it affect the world? What about the thousands of people working here, there, and there? Well, let me say that in banks which had, say, 100,000 employees, I won't name the bank, they are down 20%, and they will be down 10 to 15% every other year because of automation. And the automation is usually outsourced, so the bank doesn't incur, except for the maintenance of it, it is given to some company which provides for it. So all this will require a total different ecosystem. Now, the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, that this has helped our lives already. We do fear it, we do fear automation, but actually it has changed our lives so easily. On this machine, you can order anything, you can receive anything, you don't have to run to the post office. I don't know where my post office is, believe me, because there is no need for it. And you can go on and on. And it's not, the other thing which has happened, at least even a country like Pakistan, everybody has a phone, almost, every adult. So it's not like, in the old days, a mobile phone, people used to say, wow, you've really arrived. Now, every cab driver has it. Look at transport. I don't own a car, ladies and gentlemen. And I think I can afford it, but I just don't own it. Because since Uber has come, I don't see the need of a car. Now look at how many people like me would say, and my ego is not impacted if I arrive in even in a yellow cab, but in this case, it's not yellow. It's got a different color. And I arrive, and then when I finish the reception or the meeting or whatever, by the time I'm going down, you say, and within 5-7 minutes they come. And the billing is quite accurate, etc., etc. So the point is, change is the only constant. If you fight it, you will be very frustrated. So adapt it, adopt it, and the people who are generating change are pumping more and more stuff coming. If you go to Silicon Valley, which I did the other day, and walked through only 2 companies and talked to the staff, it was quite scary. Not just the 5G or 4G or whatever it's coming, but other applications. It's scary in a good way. More is coming down the pipeline, and the regulators have also adopted and adapted to it. So, ladies and gentlemen, now, those of us who are above 25, I think most of us, certainly I am. So, what do? I have adapted. I still have a secretary, but she is not as well used as she used to be because a lot of her role is not relevant anymore. The other thing is that geopolitically this has created some interesting situations and challenges for all of us who deal with countries and talk to people. Digitization has changed the intelligence network, how you observe your friends and adversaries, how they can make your life difficult. And these are new facets where a lot of time is being spent for security personnel to protect yourselves, not just from the traditional risks, but how digitization can come and get your system and really make your life very, very difficult. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, I will say, do not fear automation or digitization. It will reward people who innovate. It will reward people who keep an open mind. And it will reward people who have opportunity to buy those assets which are available. And by the way, the prices are coming down. Volumes are increasing. The cost of software multiplied by 1 billion users versus, say, 100 million is a big difference. Hence, the prices are coming down. And the technology battle will keep going on. So we have to be ready for it. Now, take another industry, ladies and gentlemen, about change. Retail. Have you been to a store lately? It's very empty. Bloomingdale's is less crowded than it used to be because everybody's coming through the website and delivery is done by some express company or whatever it is. So the last point I would make is that please do not fear technology or change. Please do not assume that change and all these things happening will create such a crisis that our lives will be impacted. I would just say that and age is not a factor. We're all getting older. But frankly, if you adapt and adopt these new access points and ways of doing things, you will be a happier person. And if you can invest in companies which will be leaders of this, you will feel you have done a lot. Digitization particularly is key to survival. It is like oxygen now. So please take it seriously, and we can all live in a happier, well-endowed, and comfortable world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Short information about the rules of the game, so to say. I would say that we will open up now for the questions, since the departure from the hotel is scheduled from 5:30. I would say that the latest that we could keep ourselves here could be 5 p.m. so that there's at least half an hour for you, those to have something in between, much less than otherwise was planned, but I apologize for that. It all depends on the interest that you might have, obviously, in the subject matter. I will not do too much of either summarizing and pinpointing on the issues that have been mentioned, but just only few from my side, and then right away to the question. I guess it has been mentioned at the end of the panel quite clearly that change has been always and remains to be the constant that we have in our lives, and then the same goes globally for the global society. However, the main question that one can extract from all of the speakers that we've had is that, are we ready to have leadership necessary to be put at place at both national and international levels to shape the change as much as we can by being aware what is coming, so that we have credible information, data-driven information of understanding what is coming and being prepared for it, for the change that is inevitable as a change, whether or not we like some elements of it, to mitigate the risks that are associated with it, and perhaps to go further and shape the change in such a ways that we don't have to adapt to the elements that we might not want to adapt. But at the same time, it is quite clear as well that, as it has been previously in the history of human race, life is changing profoundly at times, and we're at the crossroad of a profound change. So it might not be as it used to be, and it will not be at the level of how we process information in terms of digitalization, books that be, or otherwise, or how we retail, but profound change of the social fabric in the way that we live in our societies and lead our societies globally and nationally as well. And it will be a profound change, as it seems. And in that regard, I would say that combination of technological changes, not only at the level of digitalization per se, combined with artificial intelligence, because that's what makes it revolutionary, 5G and perhaps 6 soon after with artificial intelligence, but expected revolution in biotechnology as well. Something that is needed, something that will be happening, something where the investment is taking place as well. But biotechnological revolution is the next revolution that might be on the horizon, which can have even more profound element of an impact on our social fabric, the way we live, we're used to live as human beings, rather than anything else. So with that, I would leave it now to the audience. Any questions that you might have, any comments, please do so. Yes. And then we have one here, and then you, please, because I had a raised hand before. Yeah, and then we'll combine it. Don't go right away. I'll combine 2 or 3 comments, and then we go to the panel.
Okay. Sorry to go back a little on the first meeting this afternoon.
Do they need?
Because I guess you're here, right?
We can hear you.
Oh, do you need that maybe for the recording? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I should present myself. I am Lebanese, Maha Shalabi, and I work for the preservation of the heritage since 40 years with UNESCO. I succeeded in wartime to put 4 sites of Lebanon on the heritage list, and then I promoted for the Mediterranean. And our work in the Mediterranean is around a league of cities. And this league of cities have cities from all around the Mediterranean. 50 cities approximately has adhered to our league with a historic background. This historic background go back to Phoenician period. And this league is working on 4 thematic. One is culture and heritage, preservation of the heritage. The second is the promotion of the cultural tourism. The third is the handicraft. And the fourth one is the environment and the preserving of the Mediterranean Sea. What I have heard this morning or this afternoon was very interesting on the 4 thematic that we are dealing with in the league, especially for financing. We had only in Greece 12 cities who adhered to our league. Athens is one, and many islands. And we have to find funds. What I wanted really to talk in front of the people who was on the in this previous to see how we can cooperate to find the funds for Greece, especially for the cities in Greece and for the Mediterranean. Now, for the Mediterranean, we had also the same project everywhere around the Mediterranean. And for instance, for the cultural heritage, we are working on virtual museum using technology. And this is a project that is very interesting because we are collecting all the items from all the actual museums and doing it in a virtual way. You can visit virtually. Technology is very important, what you presented, Mr. Aziza. This is the challenge for everybody, that's right. But also, it is the reason of changing of democracy when you talk about why we don't have any more politicians very high level as it used to be in the past because of the changes, rapid changes, because of technology, because of digitalization. The old people that used to be working, it's now a different era. So you don't expect to have the same quality of politician that existed in the past. I don't believe it's possible anymore. The changes are so quick, and the generation, the young generation, are so demanding now because they are very well informed about everything everywhere in the world. In the minute, you can know every minute what's happening everywhere in the world. So they want to be at the same level. So the answer is technology. But I have a question. What's the danger of the robots? The robots, you said we don't have to be afraid of them. But if we arrive to an era where robots are leading everything, now the planes are of course, digitalized, but the cars now are going to be digitalized also. You don't have a driver. You can take a car and go where you want without a driver. And this is much more frightening than the plane, I think. Thank you.
If I may, we will collect a few questions and comments.
Yes.
Otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with the press. Please.
I can talk without that. No, it's better for the... Okay. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for the inspiring speeches. I have a very quick question, and actually I think it applies to all of you. As a decoupling, we talked a lot about timing, and for me the decoupling of timing, because you're political leaders, you're elected for 4, 5, 6 years, you make long-term decisions, and how do you make sure that those long-term decisions you make when you're elected, survives you in a way? How do you assure your legacy? Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Otherwise, we could go back. Please, Ismail.
But I'll leave the. It's more of a comment. That was one of the major debates at the time of the creation of the United States, and one of the things that was being discussed between Madison and Jefferson was whether they should limit the ability of a government to borrow. To a short time horizon, so that you would not ask future taxpayers who did not participate in making the decision to pay back these loans. And Madison carried the day by pointing out that there were things that were worthwhile doing, like a school. You build a school today, you borrow to build a school, and it's not that unreasonable that those who benefited from the school and were educated there should pay back the loan that built the school. And then we said, and besides, all the citizens here should pay back the money that we spent on the revolution reward that made them citizens. So I think that there is no problem with longer term things, because there's always the possibility of changing in the middle by successive administrations.
I'll take one last question we've had, and then we can go back to the panel.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to share with you something that just came in my mind. It can be a question, it can be something. My name is Vordonis, I'm a local native. Thank you for having me with you after the introduction of Mrs. Farida Alagi, which is a good friend. You said that we don't have leaders. Why don't we have leaders anymore? What can we do to reproduce leaders? As you were phrasing this question, I thought about other things we have discussed, and I have in my mind, is that if we want to stop seeing the worlds and the economies and the societies recollapsing and recollapsing and recollapsing, probably one thing we can do is to try to reinstall, to remember, to re-engineer, not engineer, to bring into life our fundamental root values which are leaving behind. I think that the world is collapsing, not because the capitalist system is bad, or the Christianity is bad, or the Islam is bad, but we are producing crisis because the fundamental values and principles and dreams under these systems have been diluted and are not being strong drivers of our behaviors. So if this is true, that our values have been faded away, then this gives the reply, why don't we have leaders anymore? Because in order to have leaders, leaders have to be led by values and principles and vision. So if we reinstall values and principles, then we will re-engineer and reproduce leaders. And when I was thinking about reproducing leaders, I thought about automatic cars and automatic aeroplanes which drive and behave under certain criteria, behave with certain values, behave with certain rules. So if you have the rules, the values, the criteria, then the car can drive on its own. So do we really need leaders? Or it's enough to re-establish values, and if we have values, our societies will automatically, like cars, behave properly, not dangerously, respecting the others, not killing, loving, dreaming. Anyway, that was just a thought that just came to me.
Yeah, I'll leave now the floor to the members of the panel. It's just with limited but still an experience from the Soviet Union that I have as a Georgian is that there was an attempt of some rules and values to be installed forcefully and imposed on so many nations, but then people never automatically follow any rules and never automatically perhaps follow any values. So there's a good side in it as well. You can be rebellious against the bad rules as well, but then it's much more complicated perhaps rather than machines following it. Please, what I would do is that I'll just go with some of the questions, starting with Shaukat, because one question was directly addressed to you, but then any members of the panel could kick in and then answer the questions.
Thank you, ma'am. What was the question?
No, about the technology.
Which question? I mean, I'm happy to answer anything. Yes, ma'am.
Robots related part of it. Robots and technology.
As to the ethics of using robots, or
why shouldn't we fear it?
Yeah, why should we fear?
Yeah. Why shouldn't we fear? Yeah.
Why shouldn't we fear? Yeah, I think.
We don't know their values.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you're running a business, we've all run businesses in our various careers. If I can get a robot which will produce the same end product consistently over time, cheaper than a human, I would consider it very seriously. It doesn't mean that jobs will go away, because my experience in our country, where we cut headcount down in the government quite substantially, there was a lot of hue and cry. My effigies were burnt and all that, but that passed very quickly because we had economic growth and a lot of these people got absorbed. Plus we have another escape valve, going to the Middle East. They are looking for human capital all the time. You know, a simple human capital, not a rocket scientist. So they can go to Saudi Arabia, they can go to UAE. And I went to these countries, met the heads of government, said, please, heads of state in some cases, we have these thousands of people who will be available, why don't you look at them? And they got absorbed. If you look at our remittances from workers overseas, this is one of the major contributors to the balance of payments. If they stop going and that money doesn't come, we would have a serious financial problem. So you can check these numbers, they're all available publicly. So I think, as we said earlier, we live in a world where permanent change is a way of life now. It is no longer, if a major change happens, you call the whole cabinet and spend 5 days worrying about it. No, you have to be ready, you have to have your game plans and you do it. Now, clearly, does this mean the human brain will no longer be necessary? I would say no, because you still need leaders to lead a company, a household, a town, a country, but the ecosystem will be very different. Now, digitization is taking place at mammoth proportions. We haven't seen the full impact of what's coming, but it will happen. Smart things, smart this, smart that. I don't think we would worry about it, because the human being and the human mind can adapt. It'll be painful for a while, but eventually they will adapt. And that's what, now if we reach a stage where it is so much of automation that then we all have a problem. And we'll have to deal with it. So we must, your question is very worthwhile. It will have to be discussed in forums like this. But the world will be expanding. Changes will be happening. New technology will be coming in. So we'll need people to do all that. So there will be basically, last sentence, a reordering of priorities, a reordering of skills, and retreading people so that they find a new career. And they will find a new career, because I am an optimist, maybe too much of an optimist. I believe the world, if all goes well, will keep expanding and enhancing its role. And in that situation, all these people will be getting something to do. And that's where the leaders have to come in. They have to be awake. They shouldn't wait for the riots to start and then do something. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. We have 10 minutes left, and I know you want to comment, right?
No, you go first.
Okay. I'm not so optimistic. I'm not so optimistic about these things. Especially not so optimistic like my young friend. Maybe it's connected with the younger generation. I think no. Why? Because in economy we have all these mathematized theories, but the precondition is that every human being is the same, with the same behavior. Then you can use mathematics, which is in reality not the truth. So I don't think that everything can be solved by the clever mathematical algorithms, and then why don't we have a computer like a prime minister? Just to put algorithm to agree socially, and then he will make all decisions about the budgets, about the investments, about the roads, about the everything. I don't think that this is realistic.
Because algorithms are not mathematics.
So
simply a sequence of operations.
Okay, but but
they have that in mind. Algorithms is somebody ordering according to its mind. It's not mathematics. Zero mathematics. Zero.
And because of that, all these solutions with the robots and everything are not realistic.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, human.
That's the key.
Let's just.
So what is my opinion? I think that you are now a little bit in science fiction, let's say, but definitely there will be a change in the society. Just to imagine that the tracks will not have drivers. How many working places will disappear? That very soon call centers will not have human beings. How many working places will disappear? And then is a question. But this is not for me, this is more for psychological. What will be the human beings without working? We will start to protest for everything in order to make the life interesting. And then I have to say, I think that the lack of the leaders is a little bit linked with the problem. All the big leaders had big internal problems with their countries, and because of the challenges. Now the leaders in our countries, they don't have so big problem within the countries. There are problems like Libya, but who cares about Libya? Only Farida. Yeah, that's for sure. Or some. But I will stop here. And to give you the answer, you have to have values in order to make long-term decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did some reform which was very controversial in my country. I lost elections about the tax reform. But I really believe that thanks to that tax reform, the country was stabilized. People later recognized that, but not immediately. You have to have that. That's the only. You have to have your belief, and then if you are right, and if you do something which is at the end useful, you will be the leader. Without that, no chance.
Well, I'm going to follow for what you just said, because to be honest with you, I really don't agree with what you're saying. Well, we need to wait for providential leaders. That's totally wrong, and I think it's not inspiring and is not giving any confidence to youngest to enter politics. And I'm talking, just bear with me 1 second. I didn't say that. Well, you were saying that we don't have any more leaders. Well, you know what? I just share with you my view. In any position I hold, firstly, my first obligation was to respect the oath I took when I was assuming that position. And through my whole political life, I've done that, even though there were difficult times. And you're talking about tough decisions. Well, as a Minister of Justice, I fought very tough battles. And I was, some of you I share with you because I was very proud and very happy. I missed the lunch, but because during the lunch, the decision of the Constitutional Court of Romania came out through a very, very difficult case, which could have been set as a very bad precedent for going forward. And that was just because I stood up for the right values, if we talk about the values. So my philosophy always been very simple. Any position, the position doesn't give you the weight as a leader. You give the weight of that position by the facts and actions that you are taking. And Natalie put a very, asked a very interesting but complex, but likewise simple question at the same time, if I can speak using those words. How do you pass the time test? Well, you know what? You will pass it by knowing that what you've done at that moment was the right thing. And that is defining you as a leader, because it's a big difference between statesman and policymaker and just politician. And I think it's a joint effort, but likewise a joint responsibility from all of us. And as a responsibility for the society, any component of the society, going from the press through the, what models are we promoting? What models are we endorsing? What models are we supporting? And many times you will find out that people in leading positions, not necessarily leaders, are killing the ones just coming behind, and that's a serious one, which not that many people have the courage to talk about. And that's another thing that it needs to be addressed. So in other words, I think we all need to participate to the life of the city, as we are in Greece now, and going back to the same values that was, setting up the foundation for the democracy. And it's a very simple philosophy. If the foundation is right, everything you are building will be sustainable. And the foundation has to be the values that are the same values in Romania, the common values, same in Libya, same in anywhere in the world. And with that in mind, just answering one, worry about, not answering, trying to address one worry about what the future will lie. Well, we don't know about that, but we do need to be not just optimistic, but likewise to be very responsible and put in place the right policies, even though they might cost you an election. But you know what? That's the difference between a politician and a leader. Because you know that there are times in history where you need to take the right decision, but a tough decision. And if you go for the right decision, even though for you personally as a leader is not necessarily the right for that time in terms of winning or losing election, but you know what, it's important how people are viewing you, in my humble opinion, and how the history books will view you, and that's sustaining the time. So how do we address the automatization and the artificial intelligence? It's through the education. It's very simple. When the schools were set up a long time ago, you just had the teacher as the main source of information. That's why I was trying to address through my intervention. Now the schools need to form the kids to think more, to be open to new challenges, to be open to new, opportunities, but likewise to be aware of the dangers that are. So, just to form, not just inform. And the education system needs to be changed. And if you are changing, yeah, you lose some jobs through the automatization, but you will gain different jobs through the same automatization. So it needs to be that balance. But coming back to the leaders type thing, I apologize. I put a lot of heart into it because, I think it's very important. And we were talking about this because, it is very important, especially for women in politics, to have that confidence that, yes, you will be fighting and you will be succeeding for what you think is right and cannot be wrong by promoting the right values and the right things. So I'm stopping there because otherwise I will not discipline again.
We need to really wrap up.
All what you said, I agree on it. I am from this part of thinking and values. All my work was done on values.
Mm-hmm.
But we cannot say we don't have leaders.
No, I think that... No. I think that just to not to mediate, but to wrap up with one sentence, I hope. I think here around the table, we all are representing and understanding how much value-based approach to what we do means for what we do and what we will do in the future. We have all expressed in our lifetime quite a bit of courage perhaps in pursuing those goals and values and contributing to our own countries and internationally. But the question is how much needs to be done obviously for the future so that the social contract that maintained humanity so far is renewed at the proper time when it needs to be renewed, with values being underpinning part of it, but then good mechanisms of understanding who are the stakeholders these days of the social contract that needs to be reached, unlike to who they were maybe in the past, because they are more of them now. Businesses, social networks, younger generation, politicians. It's not simple state to the society anymore. So the social contract, and has been mentioned yesterday at the panel as well, we need to renew it so that we have consensus on it. It stands the time, and then it becomes the foundation for the future. I believe in the humanity. I believe in all of us. I believe in the value of having these conversations. I thank you all for being part of it, for bearing with us, and for the good continuation of the real work then after that. Thank you.